The RCMP officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, you need to leave the premises." But the woman, my employee of over a decade, was screaming, "She's stealing my things." I didn't retire. I just stood there calm. Because in my hand, I held the one thing she never expected, her own resignation letter. An email she sent, thinking it was a threat. A threat I decided to take very, very seriously. Every boss has that one employee. The one who thinks the rules don't apply to them. The one who manipulates, lies, and holds the entire business hostage. If you've ever felt powerless against a workplace bully, if you've ever dreamed of the perfect, legally airtight revenge, then you are in for a masterclass. Hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for the story of how I turned a toxic employee's greatest weapon against her. Let's set the scene. A small travel agency in beautiful British Columbia. It's the kind of place that runs on personal relationships and meticulous detail. For years, it was owned by a lovely woman who was, let's say, conflict averse. And she had a problem. A problem named Jane. Jane was in her 60s. She wasn't just an employee. She was an institution. And she knew it. She had a long, well-documented history of what I'll politely call creative accounting when it came to her time. She was a master of the unscheduled day off. She'd call in last minute with a mysterious migraine the morning after a long weekend. But her signature move was claiming unsanctioned overtime. She'd casually mentioned she'd popped in on Saturday to finish up some filing and add a few extra hours to her timesheet. When questioned, she'd weave a tapestry of vague excuses that were just plausible enough to be frustrating, but never concrete enough to prove false. The previous owner knew. She'd caught Jane in lies before. She'd given warnings. But she was terrified to fire her. Why? Because Jane came with a pre-installed nuclear option. Before working here, Jane had been fired from another agency for the exact same behavior. And what did she do? She sued for wrongful dismissal. And she won. A settlement. That lawsuit was Jane's shield. It was her get-out-of-jail-free card. She wasn't an employee. She was a hostage-taker. Enter my friend Sandy. Sandy worked alongside Jane for years. She watched the manipulations, felt the simmering resentment every time Jane got away with it. Sandy is a divorced single mom of 2 boys, both hockey fanatics. Her life is a meticulously planned itinerary of practices, games, and work. She's tough, she's fair, but above all, she's a provider. When the owner decided to retire, she offered the business to Sandy. It was a dream and a nightmare rolled into one. Her own business. But also, Jane. Her own personal professional poltergeist. The fear was immediate. That same lawsuit horror story kept Sandy up at night. She couldn't afford a legal battle. She had a business to run and 2 boys to raise. So, she took a deep breath and instituted new rules. Clear, firm in writing. A strict no overtime policy without prior written approval. Vacation requests had to be submitted properly. For a while it worked. Jane's main scams were neutered. But a creature like Jane always has a backup plan. She discovered Sandy's one vulnerability, her kids. Sometimes, Sandy had to leave an hour or 2 early to get her boys to a game. Jane would watch her leave, and like a vulture spotting an opportunity, she'd pounce. She'd jump on the computer and book herself a day off for the next day. No asking. No requesting. Just declaring it. Sandy would arrive the next morning to find Jane's desk empty and an email sent at 4:59 p.m. the previous day that read, "Hi Sandy, just letting you know I won't be in today." Thanks, Jane. The audacity was breathtaking. Each time it happened, Sandy would feel a hot flush of anger creep up her neck. Her hands would clench. She'd stare at the empty chair, imagining the smug satisfaction on Jane's face. But she'd let it go. Why? Because without the overtime scam, Jane was just costing herself a day's pay. It was annoying, but it was a contained problem. Or so she thought. Then came the hockey tournament. A big one. Out of town. Sandy would have to be away from the office for 2 crucial days right before a weekend. She called a staff meeting. She was explicit. Crystal clear. She looked Jane directly in the eyes. "These 2 days," she said, her voice leaving no room for interpretation. "I will be away. I need both of you here. It is all hands on deck. No time off requests will be approved for these dates. Understood. Everyone nodded. Jane gave a saccharine smile. Of course, Sandy. No problem at all. The tension seemed to dissipate. But Sandy knew Jane. She felt a nagging doubt in the pit of her stomach. That weekend, while her boys were resting between games, Sandy went into the quiet, empty office to catch up on paperwork. The hum of the computer was the only sound. She pulled up the booking system. And then she saw it. A new reservation. Booked just the day before. A trip to Las Vegas. For Jane's daughter and son-in-law. Dates. Exactly the 2 days she was away. Her blood ran cold. She typed faster, her heart starting to hammer against her ribs. Another booking. A one-way plane ticket to Calgary. In Jane's name. Same dates. She felt a white-hot rage, so intense it was cold. It was a direct, blatant, in-your-face challenge. Jane hadn't just disobeyed. She had weaponized her disobedience. Sandy's fingers trembled as she pulled up the vacation calendar. And there it was. Jane's name, blocking out those 2 very days. Sandy took a deep, steadying breath. The cold rage solidified into something else, resolve. This was no longer about a day off. This was a declaration of war. And Jane had just handed her the battle plans. Sandy didn't call. She didn't scream. She went home, and she crafted an email. It was professional calm. Hi Jane, I see you've requested dates off. As per our discussion, these dates are blacked out. I'm afraid I'll have to deny this request. Regards, Sandy. The trap was set. The reply came quickly. Jane, thinking Sandy had only seen the vacation request and not the bookings, launched into her performance. Sandy, this is a family emergency. My daughter is finally having her long-awaited surgery in Calgary. I have to go care for my granddaughter. This is so unfair after all my years of dedicated service. Sandy read the lie and smiled. A cold, hard smile. She typed her response, each keystroke feeling like a hammer strike. Jane, I am sorry to hear about your daughter. It's interesting, however, that this emergency surgery coincides perfectly with the trip to Vegas you booked for her and her husband yesterday. I assume your trip to Calgary is to babysit while they're away. The answer is still no. The silence from the other end was deafening. The digital clock on Sandy's screen ticked. Then a new email. Jane's mask was off. No more excuses. Just pure, unadulterated threat. After all I have done for this business, your lack of trust and respect is appalling. I see I am not valued here. Therefore, I have no choice but to retire. Consider this my 2 weeks' notice. Sandy's breath caught in her chest. There it was. In writing. The words she had dreamed of for years. It wasn't a threat. It was a gift. She immediately forwarded the entire email chain to her accountant, her de facto business advisor. His reply was almost instantaneous. Sandy, congratulations. She's resigned. You are under no obligation to keep her for 2 weeks. You can accept her retirement effective immediately and pay her 2 weeks' wages in lieu of notice. This is the clean break you needed. She played herself. A wave of euphoric relief washed over Sandy. It was over. It was finally over. The following Monday, Sandy went in early. She brought her long-term boyfriend, not for muscle, but as a witness. They packed Jane's personal effects into a cardboard box, a sad little collection of a cheap mug, a wilted plant, and a few photos. Then Sandy went through Jane's desk. In the bottom drawer, she found it, a small, wooden box filled with handwritten index cards. Client names, numbers, addresses, even credit card details. Jane's personal little black book of power, hoarded instead of input into the company computer. Sandy took it. This wasn't personal property. This was company data, and handing it over would be a violation of privacy law. The other employee arrived. The air was thick with anticipation. Just before 9 a.m., the door opened. Jane waltzed in humming. "Good morning, everyone," she trilled, heading for her desk. She stopped short when she saw Sandy's boyfriend in the corner. Her smile faltered, just for a second. Sandy stood up. "Jane, you don't need to sit down. I've accepted your notification of retirement." She held out the check. 2 weeks' pay in lieu. Final wages. Done. Jane's face went through a journey. Confusion. Disbelief. Then, sheer, unadulterated panic. But, but I didn't retire. I'm not ready to retire, she sputtered, her eyes wide. You did, Sandy said calmly. It's in writing. Right here. She tapped the printed email on the desk. Jane's head swiveled between Sandy, the other employee, and the boyfriend. But I didn't mean it. It was a figure of speech. She was flailing. She looked at the box of her things. Her eyes scanned the contents. Panic turned to desperation. Where is it? My box. My client box. You stole it. That is company property, Jane, Sandy said, her voice like steel. It contains confidential client information. You are not taking it. I'm not leaving without it. Jane shrieked, planting her feet. That's when Sandy's boyfriend picked up the phone. I'm calling the RCMP. The arrival of the two police officers was the final, beautiful nail in the coffin of Jane's career. Jane ran to them, a sobbing, ranting mess, accusing Sandy of theft and wrongful firing. The officers, professionals to the core, separated them. They listened. They looked at the emails Sandy showed them. They looked at the box of index cards and agreed it was company property. They escorted a hysterical Jane out of the building for good, handing her the cardboard box of her pathetic belongings. But Sandy wasn't done. The next day, she placed a large, celebratory sign in the office window. Congratulations, Jane, on your retirement. We'll miss you. She even put a paid announcement in the local paper. And the final masterful stroke? When she filled out the government paperwork for Jane's departure, she didn't check terminated or quit. She checked the box that said retired. With that single checkmark, she ensured Jane was permanently ineligible for employment insurance. Jane's own threat had been used to lock her out of the system completely. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about fighting fire with fire. It's about letting your enemy hand you the water, then watching them drown in it. She didn't fire Jane. She simply accepted the gift Jane so arrogantly gave her. If this story of the world's most satisfying resignation made you punch the air in victory, then do us a huge favor, smash that like button, and let us know in the comments. What's the most audacious thing a coworker has ever tried to get away with? And of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell for more stories where justice is served, cold, calculated, and completely deserved.